Hello and welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Ernie Olima, and in today's video we'll be covering topics 11 and 12 of AQA A-Level French, demonstrations, strikes, who holds the power, and politics and immigration. This video is to assist your revision and is not a substitute for lessons and official textbooks. Also have a look at the description of this video after, as I'll put plenty of resources to help your own revision and your own research. Finally, a reminder that all of these topics, they're not just linked to France, they could be linked to any French-speaking country. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and let's get right into it. Topic 11 is demonstrations, strikes, who holds the power? So manifestation, grève, à qui le pouvoir? On the screen, you can see the three subtopics, which are le pouvoir des syndicats, manifestations et grèves sont-elles efficaces, and attitude différente envers ces tensions politiques. If you'd like a warm-up activity, try and define these key terms, so syndicat, manifestation, grève, and also try and answer the questions. So, quel est le pouvoir des syndicats? Les manifestations et les grèves sont-elles efficaces? And quelles sont les attitudes différentes envers ces tensions politiques? We'll be having a look at these in much more detail later on. On the screen, you have some words that can be useful when looking at this topic. So give the video a pause and have a look at the words if there are any you don't know. And finally here we have 10 more words linked to the last subtopic. Le pouvoir des syndicats. The historical importance of trade unions. Trade unions have played a key role in France's social and political history, securing fundamental rights, including social security in 1945. The May 1968 protests featured massive union-supported strikes, leading to higher wages and better working conditions. A low membership rate but strong influence. So only 10% of French workers are union members, which is a low rate compared to Scandinavian countries, where it's about 60 to 70% on average. Despite this, unions have strong influence due to their ability to mobilize large protests and strikes. They play a key role in negotiating collective agreements, which benefit all workers, not just union members. The role of trade unions in national strikes. Unions organize and coordinate strikes, particularly in strategic sectors like transport, education, and healthcare. For example, the 1995 strikes against pension reforms shut down the country and forced the government to back down. More recently, in 2023, unions led massive protests against Macron's pension reforms. Their influence is seen in their ability to mobilize public opinion and pressure policymakers. Their impact on social reforms. Thanks to union pressure, several social improvements have been achieved, including reducing working hours. So in 2000, the work week was made to 35 hours a week, increases in the minimum wage, stronger worker protections, especially in dismissal policies and social security. In 2017, Macron's labour reforms were heavily opposed by unions who feared increased worker precarity. Today, unions remain key players in defending pensions, workplace health, and workers' rights. One example of an organisation linked to trade unions is la Fédération nationale des syndicats d'exploitants agricoles, which is a French umbrella organisation charged with the national representation of 20,000 agricultural unions and 22 regional federations. In 2024, there were farmer protests in France. These were large-scale demonstrations by French farmers against economic pressures, EU regulations, and foreign competition, particularly related to the proposed EU-Mercosur trade deal, which was a deal with some countries in South America. In response to the protest, Gabriel Attal's government scrapped proposed reductions in government subsidies for agricultural diesel and other measures to reduce financial and bureaucratic burdens for farmers. However, the protests persisted. On the screen, I've put some photos from the protests. Manifestations et grèves sont-elles efficaces? Starting off with a powerful pressure tool. Protests and strikes can force governments or companies to negotiate by disrupting essential services or the economy. They have historically led to major social and political changes, such as the 1936 workers' rights movement in France, a varying impact depending on context. The success of a protest depends on factors like public support, government response, and media coverage. Some movements achieve quick victories, while others fail or take years to bring change. Economic and social consequences. Strikes can harm businesses, disrupt daily life, and slow down economic growth. However, they can also improve workers' rights and living conditions, leading to long-term benefits. Public support is essential. Protests are more effective when they gain sympathy from the general public. If seen as too disruptive or violent, movements risk losing credibility and government support. The evolution of protest methods. Traditional strikes and street protests are now complemented by digital activism, social media campaigns, and legal action. Movements today use online petitions, viral videos, and coordinated boycotts to spread their messages and to apply pressure. There are three real-life examples of des manifestations et des grèves in France. So the first one is the Eiffel Tower in early 2025. In early 2024, it was closed due to a 6-day strike. In 2024, in September, there were protests over the new Prime Minister at the time, Michel Barnier. And finally, in 2025, there were rallies and protests and marches on International Women's Day. I've put the links to these articles in the description of this video, so you can have a look if you'd like to find more details. If you're looking for examples from other countries, I've got an example from Belgium and one from Chad. So close to 100,000 people protested in Belgium over plans to cut social services in a strategy to reduce debt. This was in early 2025, and hundreds of people in Chad protested against French troops being present in the country. Attitude différente envers ces tensions politiques. The French government's firm stance. So overall, the French government often argues that reforms such as pension changes are necessary for economic stability. For example, despite months of protests in 2023, President Emmanuel Macron pushed through pension reform, raising the retirement age from 62 to 64, even using Article 49.3 to bypass a parliamentary vote. Public opinion, divided but influential. Many French people support protests, especially against unpopular policies. For example, in 2018, the Gilets jaunes, or Yellow Jacket movement, gained broad support due to frustration over fuel prices, taxes, and economic inequality. However, in some cases, prolonged strikes, such as public transport strikes, can turn public opinion against protesters. Employer and business concerns. So generally, employers will oppose strikes as they disrupt their workforce and the economy. Large companies often lobby for reforms to increase flexibility in the labour market. Youth and student involvement. French students and young people frequently join political movements, seeing protests as a way to shape their future. We're now going to have a look at the causative construction. So in French, this is when you use a verb to make someone else do an action or to describe something that happens because of someone's action. It typically involves a verb like faire, followed by an infinitive verb. For example, faire réparer. An example sentence would be Je fais réparer ma voiture, which translates to I'm having my car repaired. Here, faire is used to show that the subject, which is I or je, is causing someone else to repair the car. Here's how it works. Faire is conjugated to match the subject of the sentence. So je fais, for example. The second verb, the infinitive, describes the action that is being done by someone else. For example, if you want to say he is having the house cleaned, you would say il fait nettoyer la maison, which essentially translates to he is causing someone else to clean the house. And if you want to say she is making her brother study, you would say Elle fait étudier son frère, which translates to she is causing her brother to study using that construction. The simple structure is subject plus faire being conjugated plus infinitive verb. As a practice, how would you say we are having a new school built? The answer's on the screen. You'd say nous faisons construire une nouvelle école. And then how would you say you are having dinner prepared using vous? You are having dinner prepared. The answer is vous faites préparer le dîner. Some key points to remember. The verb faire in the causative construction is always followed by an infinitive, and the action is done by someone other than the subject. However, the subject causes it to happen. Topic 12 is politics and immigration, la politique et l'immigration. The three subtopics for this one are solution politique à la question de l'immigration, l'immigration et les partis politiques, and l'engagement politique chez les immigrés. Some words that could be useful are on the screen here, so please give the video a pause and have a look at these words. And then there are 10 more here for the final subtopic. Solution politique à la question de l'immigration. Political solutions to the issue or the question of immigration in France. Stricter border controls and migration quotas. France has reinforced its border controls, particularly along key entry points such as the Italian border. Measures include increased police presence, identity checks, and cooperation with neighbouring countries. Migration quotas are debated, with some politicians advocating for limits based on economic needs and humanitarian concerns. Regularization of undocumented immigrants in key sectors. So this is when countries such as France grant legal status to undocumented workers, especially in sectors facing labour shortages such as construction, hospitality, and healthcare. However, these regularization policies are often controversial, with some arguing that they encourage illegal immigration, while others seeing them as necessary for economic stability. Reform of the asylum system. France has made efforts to speed up the asylum procedures and to improve accommodation for asylum seekers, but there are concerns about long processing times, overcrowded reception centres, and difficulties in deporting rejected applicants. Recent reforms aim to streamline the process while maintaining strict criteria for refugee status. Integration policies and French language requirements. Immigrants in France are encouraged to integrate through language courses and civic education. The government requires certain migrants to sign le contrat d'intégration républicaine, which I put on the screen here, which commits them to learning French and understanding French values. Language proficiency is often a requirement for permanent residency and citizenship. Finally, the role of the European Union in managing immigration. As an EU member, France follows European migration policies, including border management, through Frontex, which is also known as the European Border and Coast Guard Agency, and also agreements on asylum distribution. However, tensions exist between France and other EU countries regarding the responsibility for asylum seekers, particularly in cases where migrants first enter the EU through other nations such as Italy or Spain. France has called for a more balanced approach to sharing the burden of migration within the EU. L'immigration et les partis politiques. So immigration and political parties in France. The far right has a strict stance on immigration. So parties like the Rassemblement National, or the RN, advocate for stricter immigration laws, including prioritizing French nationals for jobs and social benefits. The RN has also called for referendums on immigration policy and the re-establishment of national border controls, arguing that immigration threatens French identity. The left tends to have a focus on human rights and integration. So left-wing parties, including La France Insoumise and parts of Le Parti Socialiste, generally support more inclusive immigration policies, arguing that migrants contribute positively to society. They often call for easier pathways to regularization for undocumented migrants, particularly those working in essential sectors like healthcare and construction. Macron and the centrist approach to immigration. So Emmanuel Macron and his party, as of the time of this video, Renaissance, which was formerly La République en Marche, take a centrist position, balancing economic needs with stricter immigration controls. In 2023, Macron's government introduced a controversial immigration bill that combined tougher deportation rules for undocumented migrants with measures to legalize those working in labor shortage industries. There are debates over asylum seekers and border policies. The handling of asylum seekers is a major point of tension between parties. The RN, or the Rassemblement National, and the right-wing party, Les Républicains, the LR, argue for tougher asylum laws and faster deportations, while left-wing parties advocate for improved humanitarian protections. Disagreements over some EU migration policies also create political divisions. Finally, political tensions over migrant reception and integration. Certain local governments, especially in big cities like Paris and Marseille, tend to have more pro-immigration policies, supporting social programs for migrants. Meanwhile, in some rural areas and conservative regions, there's strong opposition to immigration, and right-wing parties often gain support by linking it to social tensions, unemployment, and security concerns. In the description of this video, I've put a link to the article, which is about immigration and political parties. Give this a read and then we'll have a look at it on the next slide. We're going to have a look at the main points of the article, looking at some quotes that were in there. So, pour un accueil digne des migrants, which translates to for a dignified reception of migrants. This summarizes the left-wing coalition's stance on immigration, advocating for emergency accommodation, regularization of workers, and expanded asylum rights. The next quote is répondre à l'inquiétude existentielle et au sentiment de dépossession. Translates to respond to existential anxiety and the feeling of dispossession. So Emmanuel Macron's government is positioning itself as tough on immigration, addressing concerns about security and social cohesion, partly to appeal to right-wing voters. Faciliter les expulsions de délinquants et d'islamistes. Facilitate the expulsion of delinquents and Islamists. So this is Jordan Bardella of the RN, Rassemblement National. He wants to introduce a strict immigration law focusing on deportations and restricting birthright citizenship. La République doit respecter tous ceux qui croient en une religion et ceux qui ne croient pas. The Republic must respect both those who believe in a religion and those who do not. Macron proposes a balanced debate on secularism, or la laïcité, similar to Jacques Chirac's approach in 2003 when religious symbols were banned in public schools. Remplacer l'aide médicale d'État par un fonds qui ne couvrira que les urgences vitales. Replace state medical aid with a fund that will only cover vital emergencies. The RN aims to limit healthcare access for undocumented migrants, restricting it to urgent medical needs only. L'engagement politique chez les immigrés. So, political engagement amongst immigrants. Voting rights and political participation. While immigrants without French nationality cannot vote in national elections, EU citizens can vote in local and European elections. There have been debates about granting voting rights to non-EU immigrants in local elections, but proposals have not passed. Representation in politics. France has seen an increase in politicians of immigrant backgrounds. However, underrepresentation remains an issue, with barriers such as discrimination and socio-economic factors limiting access to political careers. The role of community organisations and unions. Many immigrants engage politically through community groups and trade unions, advocating for workers' rights, housing, and social justice. Protests and political mobilisation. Immigrants in France have been active in protests, particularly concerning issues like police violence, racism, and discrimination. The suburbs or les banlieues also have large immigrant populations which can contribute towards this. Movements such as the 2005 riots and the protests following the killing of Niall Merzouk, whose name I've put on the screen, in 2023 highlight political activism among immigrant communities, especially in the suburbs or les banlieues, where we've seen not only protests but also riots. Finally, challenges to engagement. Language barriers, legal status, and social discrimination can limit political engagement among immigrants. Despite this, efforts such as citizenship programs and integration initiatives aim to encourage greater political participation. Inversion after adverbs. So in French, inversion is a grammatical structure where the subject and verb switch places. It's mainly used in formal writing and questions. However, inversion can also occur after certain adverbs, particularly in literary or formal styles. The reason it's used, like mentioned before, it's sometimes in formal writing, news or articles, and can add emphasis and a sophisticated tone to the sentence. In spoken French, it's often rare to hear inversion, but it's also grammatically correct, so you may come across it in a writing activity or also in a translation. So inversion happens after some adverbs when they appear at the beginning of a sentence. For example, some adverbs including aussi, à peine, peut-être, sans doute, and encore would require these adverbs would require inversion after. How is it structured? The adverb plus inverted verb subject structure follows a specific pattern. So you start off with the adverb, such as those we saw on the previous slide, including aussi or à peine. Then you have the main verb or the auxiliary verb, and then you have the subject pronoun. So we'll have a look at an example sentence. Aussi a-t-il décidé de partir? You can see aussi, that is the adverb, and then we have an inversion here. Now, note that we've used a T between a and il, so a coming from the verb avoir. The reason there's a T is because when the verb ends with a vowel, it wouldn't sound correct to say aussi a il. So just to make the pronunciation better, you're meant to add a T. So aussi a-t-il décidé de partir? The next one, à peine était-il arrivé que le téléphone a sonné. He had barely arrived when the phone rang. Peut-être viendra-t-elle demain? Perhaps she will come tomorrow. And sans doute ont-ils raison? They're probably right. And in all of these cases, they've inverted the verb. So instead of sans doute ils ont raison, you say sans doute ont-ils raison. This is a basic explanation of inversion. There are some exceptions and some other rules. So if you need more practice, there are lots of YouTube videos and websites that talk about it. And another note is that when using peut-être and sans doute, you can use inversion or you can use que. So instead of saying sans doute ont-ils raison, meaning they're probably right, you could say sans doute qu'ils ont raison. Or instead of saying peut-être viendra-t-elle demain, you could say peut-être qu'elle viendra demain. We have now reached the end of this video. Please check out the description where I'll put some links to articles mentioned in the video. And this also marks the end of the series. So starting from topic 1, we finished at topic 12. Thank you for keeping up and following the series. Keep learning, keep practicing, keep improving your French, and most importantly, good luck with your A-level exams. Finally, if this series helped you, feel free to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel to stay up to date for any more content that I'll be releasing. Thank you very much.